Hello and welcome. This is the Social Studies new GCSE specification online, obviously, briefing. We're here to sort of support and guide you through the new specification and try and support you in any way we can. I'm Jo Leahy and I'm the subject advisor for this new qualification. And I will actually be helping you here today. So I'm going to share my screen with you, if you could bear with me 2 seconds. And I just want to see, here we go. Right, I'll take my face out, there we go. Okay, so a Wave 2 subject. Hopefully you've all experienced or been aware that new qualifications have been underway with Wave 1 starting from September 2025. We're obviously looking at this Wave 2 subject, which is due to start in September 2026. I just need to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. WJEC really needs to record all of the PL, the CPD events that are going on. So this event will actually be recorded. It's part of, if you like, confidentiality of assessment materials and all the conditions that we have to evidence to show we're following, for the regulator, following everything successfully. I do need to emphasise that delegates are not permitted to make their own audio or video recordings on any aspect of this event. Okay. Hopefully you would, or you have, I know some people have, so thank you very much, submitted ahead of this event some questions you wanted answered regarding the new qualification. These we will address a little bit later on. But we also, we would encourage you, in fact, to post any further questions you have, perhaps towards the end of the presentation, as many of these questions might well be answered as I go along. There is a facility that you should see, Ask a Question, and you can post your questions there, which hopefully we will have time at the end to address. You should have received a link to all the pre-event materials to an email address that you have supplied with us during the registration process, and a link to this actual PowerPoint presentation and a recording of it will be sent to the same address once the event has finished. Before I actually go through the agenda for today, I also, this is sort of a new thing that hasn't been put on the PowerPoint, but I wanted to sort of introduce this now, that on the Social Studies GCSE website, adverts have gone out for principal examiners for the Unit 1 exam, Unit 3 exam, but also the Unit 2, which is externally assessed. So if there's anyone who thinks they would like to get involved with this new qualification, please have a look on the Social Studies website. And if you have any further questions, could you just email socialstudies@wjec.co.uk. Okay, thank you. So, going back to today, the agenda, in front of you, you can see the welcome and the introduction part is going on now, but the majority of this session is going to be guiding you through the new qualification, the specification, in particular, how it's been organised, structured, and anything else we can do to try and make the transition to this subject or the delivery of this subject much easier for you. We will then address some of the submitted questions. We will answer those. And if we do have time, we'll try and address as many questions that you've posted at the end of the presentation. I will also outline some further support that we have available for you with the delivery of social studies. Okay, thank you. Moving on. As I've said, I don't know if anybody's joined a bit late, but I'm Jo Leahy, the subject advisor, and we are here today to try and support you with your planning, really highlighting the main points for you to consider, while also trying to address many of your concerns and questions that you may have. I know in the chat facility that a linked specification has actually been provided for you in case you want to get hold of that, but you can also access it on the website and also when you have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. Before we actually get into the main features of the qualification, I thought this was a really good time to just see the journey that we've come on in the development of social studies. It is a brand new subject, and really it has started its journey from 2019 when Qualification Wales first held its first public consultation regarding GCSEs. And on the left-hand side of the screen are really all the Qualification Wales input into this development, and it ranges from 2019 to 2023. And along that journey there have been several public consultations where teachers and any other stakeholders who are interested in the subject could have had some involvement along the way. WJEC in fact didn't get involved with the subject till, at least when I say get involved, in the development of the subject, until September 2024 when the Wave 2 subjects were introduced. And within that we had appointees with lots of different specialism in terms of some of the subjects that are involved in this new subject, such as government politics, psychology, sociology, geography, were involved in the initial draft of the spec and also in the specimen assessment materials. And if you followed the right-hand side of the screen, this is really showing us the path that WJEC has taken until September the 28th, 2025, when the specification was actually published, the final version, in September. In addition to this, we obviously have to follow the guidelines offered to us by the regulators, Qualification Wales, and the approval criteria that WJEC has had to follow. There's a link here if anyone is interested in looking at sort of the background criteria that we've based this qualification on. It's all going to be on the PowerPoint for you to have a look at. So, the qualification itself. On the screen in front of you now is a basic overview of this qualification, and highlighted here you can see it summarises the main titles of each of the units. There are 4 units, 2 of them are written exams, Unit 1 and Unit 3, and 2 of them are NEA units. It's a unitised qualification and it is not tiered. And on the right-hand side, you will see that we have already provided support with a blended learning specification walkthrough resource. And again, I've provided a link there for you to access this. Or you can actually go on to the Social Studies website where you go to the training materials and you will find an information to get a free copy of this resource. Okay. Also on this overview of the qualification, you will see the weighting and the marks that have been allocated to each of these units, and also a brief outline of what each unit is all about. I will be going into more detail with each of these units shortly, but this is just an overall sort of view of what the qualification is based on. You can find it actually on page 4 of the specification when you have an opportunity to study it. As with all new GCSE qualifications, the curriculum for Wales really is the underlying framework that we've based it on, and I think that's the important thing to remember, that GCSE Social Studies is following in line with the Wave 1 subjects, where Curriculum for Wales framework is being seen right throughout it. And for your information, designing your curriculum of the section of the humanities area of learning experiences is the area you really need to be looking at. Now, if there's any teachers who haven't been involved with the curriculum for Wales, I would strongly advise you to speak to other Wave 1 subjects if you need to, with a bit of support to help you with this. But I do know there is a lot of information out there to support you, and you can find here 2 documents that are linked to the humanities AOLE, statements of what matters and the principles of progression. 2 documents that will really assist and help you throughout your planning. In front of you, you can now see in a little bit more detail a breakdown of each of the units. Unit 1 is all about society and social issues. It's really an understanding of societies and how they work, a little bit of history about societies, but really sort of setting the scene and getting learners to understand what society is all about. Secondly, we have political institutions, the rights and responsibilities of citizens in Wales, but also globally. Obviously, the political institutions and the rights and responsibilities of citizens are going to impact on society. So it's an important part of Unit 1 that learners will need to cover. And the third part is looking at the social issues in Wales, but also around the world. Very contemporary social issues that many of the learners will already be aware of, possibly on the news and the media around them. Following this is Unit 2, it's the NEA, and this is literally based on Unit 1, on the society and social issues, where learners are expected to explore sources, research social issues, and communicate. And I will go through more of this when I get to the Unit 2 NEA section shortly, these social issues. Moving on to Unit 3. This unit is based on social change in contemporary societies, where learners are involved with learning about what social change is all about, and how it occurs, and why it occurs, and also moving on to social movements, different types of what is a social movement, different types of social movements, and actually looking at what we call change makers that have made an impact in different areas within society. And the last unit, Unit 4, is a synoptic unit that's brought everything together at the end, where they then have to try and plan an effective social change. I will, and again, I'll go into this NEA with you in a little bit more detail. They don't carry out the social action that we're looking at this change, but they're planning for it. And at the bottom of this section in Unit 4, you can see I've actually mentioned the social action, which is what they're going to plan, must be based on a legal, non-violent example. Moving on, within the specification, we have obviously assessment objectives. And if we were to break this down, there are 4 of them. AO1, as in most subjects, is actually assessing learners' knowledge and understanding. And in this case, it's about change, concepts, issues, processes, structures and terms, all relevant to the study of society. AO2 is then applying what they know and understand of each of those features in the study of societies, but to a different context. AO3 is the higher order, if you like, command words of analyse, evaluate, make judgments on the features relevant to the study of society. And then AO4 is where learners are expected to select, use and apply skills and techniques in more practical situations to undertake inquiries relevant to the study of society. With this in mind, if we look at the assessment objectives, you can see that each of the units have different assessment weightings. And I'm just going to draw out one or two features from this table. Unit 1, the first exam or examination paper, is heavily weighted with AO1, the knowledge and understanding, with 15%, and AO3 is only 5%. Unit 3, the second exam, you will see that there is 10% AO1, 10% AO2, so the even distribution of weighting for each of these AO1, AO2 and AO3, 10% each. The other point I want to sort of emphasize here, notice that AO4 will not be assessed on the exam papers. The more practical nature assessment objectives will actually be assessed on the NEAs, Unit 2 and particularly Unit 4. Okay. Yeah. And then at the bottom row, we've got overall weightings leading up to 100%, AO1 25%, AO3 25%, etc. I would point out that the practical aspect 26 has the highest weighting out of all 4 of the assessment objectives, which hopefully will benefit the candidates, the learners. The next section I'm going on to really is trying to understand, when you have the specification in front of you, how do you go about planning and using the specification in developing and delivering this course to learners? Well, at the top of the screen you can see there's a little just a little inset, a little image of 2 columns: section, which is the titles to each section on the left hand side, and in the right hand column you have the amplification. And it's the amplification where the details in what you need to include and develop are actually listed. And I'm going to just spend the rest of the time on this slide going through some very important terms, this slide and the next one actually, on the stems that are used. You will see them in that column, the amplification, on every section throughout the specification. These stems are important in terms of you knowing how much detail to go into each of these sections. If you have a stem that reads learners should be aware of, then generally learners do not need to understand all aspects of this content in any particular detail. I suppose really I could use an example here of the UN sustainability goals. They don't need to know every sustainable development goal, but they need to know that it's out there, who actually created it and what is its aim. So just having a feel and being aware of some of these more I don't know, global, even the Wellbeing Act in Wales or the Futures Act is another area that you need to be aware of. The next stem, learners should know. Learners really need to demonstrate basic knowledge and understanding. So again, not requiring as much detail as perhaps the third learning stem. This is the stem that learners really need to be able to demonstrate greater depth of knowledge. Learners should understand. They need to be able to apply the knowledge to familiar and unfamiliar contexts, and they need to be able to analyse and evaluate information when you see this stem. So it's really important that these sections are covered in more detail. And the last stem, learners should be able to, really is concerned with applying knowledge and understanding to the more practical situations, demonstrating application of practical skills and techniques. So you'd expect to be seeing that stem a little bit more with the NEA Unit 2 and Unit 4s. I do also want to emphasise there are other key terms you need to be aware of within the specification. On Units 1 and 3, if you see the word including, then you were advised to cover that content. In fact, it must be taught because it could well be subject to assessment. Whereas terms like, for example, or such as, then the content is there for guidance only, and you could use any alternative example instead. With NEA tasks, the word should, you will need to include what has been listed, whereas could, that's there again for guidance only. So really important that you get to grips with some of these keywords before actually starting the development process with the content for learners. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes looking at NEA. We have, as I've mentioned, Unit 2 and Unit 4. And the only difference really between them is that Unit 2 is set and marked by the WJEC. In other words, it is externally marked. Teachers are not expected to mark it. Whereas Unit 4 is set by the WJEC, marked by the teachers, and then moderated by the WJEC. Both NEAs have the same percentage of the qualification, and both have the same equals 60 marks. I'm going to spend a little bit more time looking at each of these to give you a feel of what they're about. There will be more support with the NEA as we move through the qualification, but at this point this is just a brief outline of what it could look like and what it's all about. So what do the learners actually have to do? Well, they are going to be investigating society and social issues. They will be using a variety of evidence sources supplied by the WJEC. They will then assess the credibility of these sources. Learners will be involved in collecting their own data using relevant research methods, where they then will draw conclusions from data, and then they will finish off by creating an artifact to present their results. In the September, and I'll come into dates and things as we move on, an NEA brief will be issued via the WJEC portal, and this brief will consist of data sources and a number of tasks. The tasks will not change from one series to the next unless you've been notified by the WJEC, but what is important is that each year the social issue outlined will change, and that will mean that centres must use the correct social issue data sources from the year the candidate's work will be submitted for marking. Yeah, they have to use it for the year that you're going to submit for marking. The assignment itself will take it will take up to 6 hours and 30 minutes, but this can be completed over several sessions. It doesn't have to be done in one go. But the only thing that we are insisting on is that these assessments must be submitted digitally as one PDF document. It could still be handwritten, but then it would have to be scanned, or it can be completed digitally and then just uploaded. The Unit 4, here's an overview of this. This is, as I've already mentioned, is to consider how they can plan for a legal, non-violent social action for a social issue that affects a community. They will be issued with a pack or an outline of this unit. It won't change from one series to the next. It'll be exactly the same. So it is different from Unit 2, where the resources will change as a result of a change in issue. This one will not change. The tasks will remain the same from one series to the next unless notified by the WJEC. Again, same timing, 6 hours 30 minutes to complete in several sessions, and the assessments must be submitted digitally as one PDF, handwritten, scanned, or completed digitally. And finally, when we consider the appendices, there are 3 sections on the or within the specification. Appendix A is really there to outline opportunities to give you ideas of how to embed elements of the curriculum for Wales. This doesn't mean there aren't many other ways in which you can embed elements. There are many, many different ways by looking at the content that you can do this. Appendix B is actually displaying the concepts that need to be covered as part of this qualification. There's a table there outlining them and where they could be used within the content. There's a list of concepts actually here in Appendix B. It's also highlighted at the beginning of the specification, and this is basically what the qualification is based on, these key concepts. Please keep those in mind when you're developing your resources. And then finally, Appendix C is all about areas of the content that have specific Welsh, UK or a global focus. As with many of these curriculum for Wales qualifications, it's not just Wales. Cynefin is really important, but also you need to be looking at more national and international focus on the content you're delivering as well. The table outlines where the content could be taught using examples drawn from this table. So those are there really as a guideline for you. Obviously there's flexibility in many of the things that are there, but they're there to support you in just getting started. I know a few teachers have been asking about SAMs. The specification came out at the end of September, where we're hoping to publish SAMS materials on December the 17th, 2025. And within this publication, you will have each of these features that are outlined on the slide. You'll have an assessment overview of each unit. You'd have assessment materials for each unit, including NEA, administrative arrangements, what you have to do and how you're going to do it for the NEA, obviously controls on how you deliver the NEA, and all the declaration forms that are needed as part of the NEA process. So I guess that's coming to you as a bit of a package ready on December the 17th. The next little section, I thought that we could share with you some of the SAMS assessment materials so you can actually have a feel of what these SAMS materials are going to be like before they've even been published. I do want to highlight that SAMs are only an indicator and not prescriptive on the types of assessment questions on the Unit 1 and 3 papers. They're just an idea of questions that could come up. Unit 1 and Unit 3 will both provide a variety of question styles. Unit 1 has a greater number of marks, which I've already highlighted. But this is actual marks, so AO1 is 30 marks, AO2 20, and then the lower AO3 skills of 10, whereas for Unit 3 you can see there's an equal distribution of marks right across AO1, AO2 and AO3. So moving on to the next few slides. In front of you, you have an example of a Unit 1 questions that are actually examining AO1. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see these questions are very simple command words with draw a line, given an example, name, and it is points marking. And you can see the mark scheme on the right, that AO1 is highlighted, and you can see there are just points for any relevant answers that are given. Your classic points marking questions. Whereas with this example on Unit 1, AO2, you might well find on the paper you're going to have sources, you're going to have materials to the questions that will be based on, as in this instance. And with AO2 here, you have levels marking where bands are used, and obviously the marks are allocated band 1, 2 and 3 with sequent marks to go with it. Notice the mark scheme will also be, as in many other subjects, the indicative content to give people who look at these some idea of what the examiners are looking for. Unit 1 AO3, we've already said this is the assessing, this is the evaluative, this is to make judgments, assessment objective. In this case, you're obviously looking again for bands and levels marking that are going on here. Normally the marks are slightly higher for this type of question. It is more higher command terms, and candidates will obviously be awarded the higher marks for it. So those are 3 different examples of questions on Unit 1. On Unit 3, again, we've got the simple command words of the AO1, points marking exactly the same, that similarity from Unit 1, similar types of questions going on what we've already picked up. But I want to draw your attention to this slide in front of you. Unit 3 here, this is still an AO1, the knowledge and understanding. It's still a simpler command word describe, but this is not points marking. You can have levels marking with the bands for AO1 as well as the points marking. Unit 3 AO2, I want you to draw your attention here, a completely different applying type of question, in that you have a graph here and they're applying or looking at trends on this graph to be gaining those AO2 marks. You can see it is point marking, but it's a completely different style of AO2 from what I used on the AO1, sorry, on the Unit 1 paper. And then finally, you've got an 8-mark AO3 evaluative, assessing, judging type question, where the more longer extended answers are expected. And in this case, we've got 8 marks. So that's given you a little feel of the types of questions and how they would be delivered on the SAMS questions. All of these have been taken from parts of Unit 1 and Unit 3 SAMS questions. So you're having a little sneak preview before they're published in December. So I'm going to go on to pre-submitted questions. There are a few here that have been covered. I'll take each of them at the time. I know we have had a few questions asking about the support that is available. Well, WJEC, as with all subjects, actually creates a guidance for teaching resource for each of the units. I want to reassure you that expertise in their fields are actually creating and developing the sections that they have their knowledge in. So for example, we have psychology teachers developing the sections on psychology. We have the sociology teachers doing the sociology sections, etc. These guidance for teaching documents will provide teachers with planned, and they are very, very detailed, to provide you with planned classroom activities and resources to help you with the new content. In addition, the blended learning digital resources, as I speak, are in development, and they will be developed for this new specification available on the WJEC website, probably end of the year, end of this academic year, I would have thought. So, will resources such as textbooks and online blended learning be published? This is the second question. Unfortunately, there are no plans to produce or endorse a textbook for the specification. Instead, we are using the blended learning digital resources, which will be available in both Welsh and English. There we are by the summer term of 2026. These blended learning resources are editable, so that you can use them, develop them, and tailor them to meet your individual needs. It's just a starting point for you, and you can do whatever you want with them. The third, and I think this is a really good question, and if you are planning to come to the Pan Wales events in spring 2026 for social studies, we will be actually going into more detail about how to deliver this qualification effectively. But this question here Is there an order in which units should be taught? Well, the answer is no, but the centres will determine, depending on your circumstances, the order of the units and how you deliver them. But remember, Unit 1 is really an introduction to the whole course, so it does make sense it's sort of done first, or at the beginning in Year 10 possibly. And then Unit 4 is using all the skills that they've developed throughout the course, and it is a synoptic unit, so perhaps sometime in the Year 11, the last year of the course, that Unit 4 would probably be the best time to deliver it. There's no hierarchy implied in the order in which the other two units are presented, but we will be going into this in a little bit more detail, and we'll be discussing and looking at ways of delivering this effectively in the classroom with teachers. Okay. The next question has actually been answered. Will there be sample assessments for teachers to see how the exams will be structured and how questions will be phrased? Yes, I've actually answered a bit of that already, but the assessment materials, as I've already mentioned, will be published on the 17th of December, and these will reflect and give you an idea of the sorts of structure and question phrasing that will be available on these exam papers. Will exemplar materials be available for NEA? Yes. All units will have exemplars, the SAMs and the NEAs, on the 17th of December. I think teachers understanding the assessment objectives, so this qualification is an important element of being successful in the classroom, and also for pupils. So understanding these 4 assessment objectives is important, and these are explained and broken down not only in the specification, but also on the SAMs and the mark schemes. You'll find a breakdown of each of these assessment objectives to help you. When will these assessments actually take place for each unit? If the centres are starting to teach the qualification of December 26, units 1 to 3 will be available for assessment from 2027, and unit 4 available in 2028, which is when the full GCSE will first be awarded. Will centres be supported in how to assess Unit 4? Yes. In spring 2027, the WJEC will provide preparing to assess, with many online events for internally assessed and externally moderated units. I think many of the Wave 1 qualifications are going to be involved in preparing to assess in spring 2026. So this qualification as Wave 2 is a year behind, but it'll be the same process and the same procedure. Now, I don't know if there are any further questions that you would like to ask or be involved in. If we can't actually answer all of them right now, we will be preparing a frequently asked document which will be available on the WJEC Social Studies webpage. Moving forward, what support is there or is going to be there to help you as teachers in delivering this qualification? Well, the first 3 rows is that these resources are available for you right now. As I've already mentioned, the specification is on the Social Studies qualification homepage. There's a specification blended learning walkthrough, which you again have to book onto. It's a free, you don't have to pay anything for it. It's on the website under the training tab of key documents. And also we've prepared a parents option evening flyer for you to sort of promote with your learners. The professional learning specification briefing, we're in the middle of it right now, so that's obviously helping you at some way along the line, understanding what's involved and what it's all about. I've already mentioned that the SAMs are coming up on the 17th of December. Guidance for teaching, this detailed document, will be available from the 22nd of January on the website, Social Studies website. And then the spring term, and these start from the 9th of February right through to the 27th of March. I will show you a breakdown on the next slide of each of these face-to-face events. And then finally in the summer term, there will be some blended learning walkthroughs on examinations and NEA, giving you more support and advice. Going back to the spring preparing to teach face-to-face events, these are the dates and the local authorities that have been planned. The dates are definitely confirmed. The locations, we're still in the process of confirming where some of these actually are. If you are interested or you haven't already got involved, my advice is to go and speak to your head teacher and see if you can get your names on each of these events. They're obviously Welsh medium events as well as English medium events, and they're covering the whole of Wales. So very similar to the Wave 1 format that happened last year. If any of you were involved and attended, it's a similar situation where schools will be closed, and it will be some CPD events where people can attend. So if you and I would say to you, I would advise you, it is worth coming along to, because it's all about teaching this qualification in the classroom. And finally, contact us. Rhiannon Murray is the Social Studies Subject Support Officer and an expert really in the development of all of this qualification. And if you need more details or you're not sure, then please get in contact with her. And there's an email address at the bottom. The best means of communication is through email. And Abby Young is the Subject Support Officer, who I haven't mentioned yet, but is really there to support both Rhiannon and myself. So hopefully you can get everything that you need by emailing if you haven't already done so. And the very last thing I want to ask is, could you please complete the event feedback when you have an opportunity to do so? And that would be a really nice way that we all have to have feedback. So if you could just do that to finish off this presentation, I'd be very, very happy about that. And lastly, I'd just like to thank you very much for attending and listening to me throughout this presentation. Hopefully I've answered some questions that you weren't sure about, or I've given you some guidance on where to go and where to find the support that I know many of you are looking for. Okay, thank you very much.